I'm particularly grateful for that song because ever since we started rehearsing it, the words have been running through my head because they so support the new focus for this month, celebrating spiritual community by serving together. And the words of the song honor one of America's greatest role models when it comes to selfless service, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So I've been listening to those words in my head. Let us turn our thoughts today to Martin Luther King and recognize that there are ties between us, all men and women living on the earth, ties of hope and love, of sister and brotherhood, that we are bound together in our desire to see the world become a place in which our children can grow free and strong. We are bound together by the task that stands before us and the road that lies ahead. We are bound and we are bound. It's a perfect introduction to a timely topic for our world, the task that stands before us and our individual roles in carrying that out. I'm a little self-conscious today because of this topic that I'm presenting, because it's so easy to offend people with this topic, and it is a topic that is often rejected in a self-centered society. But I have to talk about it because it's on the calendar. And so I'm going to approach it gently by talking about the difference between doing a good deed and selfless service. It's the same or similar difference between making a charitable donation versus giving selflessly. It's not that one is right or one is wrong. Both are very valuable and make a wonderful contribution to our world. I think it's just that as we practice and become spiritually mature, we start to notice there's a substantial difference in the two valuable practices. And the difference is really a shift in focus, a shift in focus from the self in me to the self in thee. Those who are familiar with selfless service, well, they start to notice that shift in focus has a relationship to the depression, the tension, and the war and the materialism in our world, because those are frequently a product of the me-first culture. And then they begin to see how selfless service is a kind of remedy for these stressful conditions that seem to plague our world. They notice how isolation and anxiety and meaninglessness come from living a life that is cut off from the very life that sustains us. As one teacher explained it through answering this question, why is selfless service so valuable? She said, because most of our self is in others. I think this is how it works. I'm a point of individual consciousness in universal mind. And at the same time, I'm part of something much larger. So I notice that there appear to be other points of consciousness. And when I focus exclusively on this one particular point of consciousness, well, I'm effectively cutting out all of the diversity and beauty and the splendor of the rest of me as it shows up in you. And that can potentially lead to a feeling of meaninglessness. You see, if my whole spiritual practice and all of my prayer and all of my work focuses on my personal happiness exclusively, well then, because part of the ingredients are missing, the recipe never produces what I expected it to. I always end up getting something that's too dry or too tasteless or not nourishing enough. When I don't take in the needs of those around me, I become separated from that part of me that exists in them. And the result is fragmentation and numbness. Perhaps that's why we hear of folk who work hard to become successful. They focus on it exclusively, and then they do become successful in all areas, successful professionally, successful financially, successful in relationships. But through introspection, they discover that they remain discontented, as if some important piece is missing. And when that is missing, it gives rise to fear of the future. Fear of loneliness, fear of dying. And maybe it's because through our focus on ourselves, we start to believe in our isolation as if it's true, as if it's real. And then to compensate, we hear of people filling up their lives with anything to substitute for the lack of connection. Activities, religions, substances, relationships. Searching endlessly for anything that will join the dots and help produce in us a sense of the connectedness that we know is our complete reality. And then the mind rises up with ideas, suggestions for what will fix it. Try this, try that, try this, try that. Leading us to attach ourselves to certain feelings that will substitute. Drawing us into things that will either dull us down so that we don't feel it, or stimulate us up so that we think that's it. And so sometimes we can find ourselves ending up following the next great teacher, following the next great philosophy, chasing after the next too good to be true, do nothing and get rich plan. Pursuing the next sensational experience that will fill us up so completely, when all the while what we were seeking remains available right under our nose. In the beginning, I mentioned there's a difference between doing a good deed and selfless service. And I want to say again, I'm not of the opinion that one is right and one is wrong. Both are valuable. It's just that today we are interested in learning about selfless service because most of us already know how to do a good deed. We can do that. Selfless service is special. So let us